Just over 2 years ago, I did an AMD APU build in a Corsair 380T Mini-ITX case for use by my kids in our home theater. It's worked great, with the only drawback being that the 380T took up an entire shelf in that entertainment center. If you open up the case, you can see that there's a lot of dead air and wasted space. I set out looking for a smaller case and settled on the EVGA Hadron Air. It's less than 60% the size of the Corsair 380T and comes with an integrated power supply, so the PSU cables are the appropriate length for this Mini-ITX case. Now, we'll get into the build and review. First, I want to go over the components that I'm going to be using. So here's the motherboard, the APU, the RAM, and the Shadow Rock LP from Be Quiet Cooler and Heatsink. I do have it inverted or backwards, so I've lost access to the PCI Express slot because my RAM is just a touch too small. If I had some low profile RAM, I'd be able to rotate it back the right way and use the PCI Express slot. We've also got the SanDisk SSD and a Panasonic slot load Blu-ray player, both already mounted in the little trays or caddies that will be used for the build. If you'd like to get an overview of the Hadron Air, EVGA did an overview and unboxing when they launched the product. We'll link to that here and instead focus on the build itself in this video. Here's the time lapse of the build. In total, it took 30-40 minutes or so to do. The most time-consuming thing was the cabling, and this has been my experience with any Mini-ITX build. In this case, a pair of needle nose pliers will be your best friend. You can also get additional access by removing the 2 exhaust fans from the top so that you can insert your hands that way to assist with cabling and component installation. All in all, it's a pretty easy case to build in, and I would rate it above average from my experience in building with Mini-ITX cases. So upon firing the rig up, I was quite shocked to hear how loud the stock fans were. So I went on a bit of a mission to try and reduce fan noise while maintaining a good thermal performance. For reference, I'm using an AMD A10-7890K APU, which has a 95 watt TDP, and it's cooled with a Be Quiet Shadow Rock LP fan and heatsink, which is rated for 130 watts TDP. And for this and all the future slides, the ambient temperature in my room is 22 degrees Celsius and the ambient sound is 41 decibels. The first stats we're going to look at here is an idle sound and temperature. This is letting the machine boot up and sit for 5 minutes for all startup processes to finish and APU utilization to settle down. With the stock fans, both of them running, we were at 28 degrees Celsius on the CPU, but a noise rating of 47.5 decibels, which is significantly louder than the 41. The first thing I tried was unplugging one of the stock fans, which brought me up to 32 degrees Celsius on the APU and down to 44 degrees for the noise level. After that, I tried simply just unplugging both fans, and the APU temperature crept up to 34 degrees, and the noise went down to about 41.5 decibels, with the Be Quiet Shadow Rock barely being perceptible. I got a pair of Noctua NFS 12B Redux fans. These are the new gray and black variants that are out on the market. With one installed, it dropped the APU temperature down to 33 degrees, and with both of them, it dropped it down to 30 degrees Celsius. With either one or two installed, the total noise envelope was 42 decibels, as these fans are essentially silent when in use. As we go through the next couple of charts, you'll notice that the sound profile doesn't change. The stock fans with the EVGA Hadron Air are not PWM fans, so they run at full speed at all times, even at idle. So the 47.5 decibels and 44 decibels are going to always be there. Conversely, the Noctua fans are essentially silent, even when running at full speed, whether there are one or two of them. So this line will not change as we go from graph to graph. In the forward-moving graphs, I'm going to remove the numbers from the 2 ambient lines as well as the active sound line so that we can clean up the visuals a little bit. For my load testing, I ran the Unigine Heaven demo for 10 minutes and then took sound and temperature readings. With both stock fans running, the APU temperature hit 44 degrees. With just one fan running, it only crept up to 47 degrees. With both stock fans unplugged, the temperatures peaked at 57. With one Noctua fan, it only came down to 54, and then with both Noctua fans, it only came down to 53. So we're seeing here that these Noctua fans, though they are essentially silent, are not very good at expelling hot air out of this case. For what I'm calling recovery here, I stopped the benchmark and then let the machine idle for 10 minutes to let the APU cool and the fans exhaust the hot air from the case. With the stock fans, the APU cooled back all the way down to 30 degrees Celsius. With just one of the two stock fans, it brought it down to 33 degrees, which is just one over the original ambient temperature. With no fans running, it was only able to recover down to 40 degrees Celsius, a pretty big peak over the 34 idle. With one Noctua fan, we came down to 36, and with two, it only came down to 35. Pretty big deltas over the original reading, especially with both Noctua fans running, where it originally was idling at 30 degrees Celsius. In the end, I decided just to unplug one of the two stock fans and run with that configuration. It brought my noise profile down to 44 decibels from 47.5, essentially cutting the perceptible noise in half. It only raised my temperature profiles just slightly and still had a good idle and recovery. The Noctua fans really didn't perform well at all, even if they were near silent. The load temperatures were really high, and the recovery was a little higher than what I would want, especially spending $40 for the needed equipment. Once I got the unit reinstalled into the cubby in the entertainment system, the noise out of the single stock fan really wasn't perceptible in actual usage. I also have to recognize that others that have more powerful hardware in the EVGA Hadron Air with a higher end CPU with more aggressive cooling and an actual graphics card with the noise that cooling will generate may not notice the noise generated by the exhaust fans, or they may not add enough additional noise to really be an issue. I also have to say that I find myself particularly sensitive to noise issues, so given all of this, your mileage may indeed vary. In the end, I really like the EVGA Hadron Air, and I would give it our recommended rating. It's a small case with a lot of potential, and you can put a lot of powerful hardware in here. It's not perfect, but I think a few small changes could really modernize it and bring it into 2017 and soon to be 2018. The first thing I would do is to swap out the standard fans for PWM fans. I think this is really necessary in this modern day and age. It would really help the noise profile, especially at idle. The next thing I would do would be to black out the cabling. I think this would give it a much more elegant and streamlined look on the interior. And finally, I would remove one of the drive bays. I really don't think it's necessary to have two drive bays in a Mini-ITX case today with the advent of NVMe storage and so many people adopting it. With one drive bay, you could put in one 3.5-inch drive or two smaller solid-state drives. You could open up a fair amount of space for cable routing and add a lot of tie-downs and options for cable management. In the end, EVGA could even go the extra mile and black out part of the window here to conceal that area, but I realize that may be a bit overkill and too much for a minor tooling update. So again, we give this our recommended award. If you're interested in the EVGA Hadron Air, we've got an Amazon affiliate link down in the description. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If there's another case you'd like us to take a look at, leave that there as well. Please subscribe, follow, and do all that social media stuff, and we will see you next time.